Yes. Yeah, it's a pain, man. Yes. Yeah, it's a pain, man. Yes. Yeah, it's a pain, man. Yes. Yeah, that's not good. Hmm. Yeah, that's too bad. That's tough. That's tough, on those roads. If they're slippery or if it's hard to see, they just keep going. That is right. We are here on WACK, Newark, New Jersey, not New Jersey, New York. I apologize. And WYSL, Rochester. My name is Craig Miles. I'm actually filling in for Larry Sharpe. You're used to hearing from Larry. And Larry is out on the road because Larry cares. Larry cares about New York State, and he's making his fourth or fifth Sharpe full Sharpe across the state. So that's something that very few, if any, politicians have done. And that's what Larry's up to. So that's why you see me on your screen here instead of Larry. And the topic today is going to be, what can we be thankful for? There's a lot of things in our state, in our nation, in the world, really, that we can look at and we say, I really don't like how that's going. I'm not a big fan. The truth is, we have a few things that are actually pretty good. You can be thankful for those. First thing that I want to talk about is the Rittenhouse verdict, right? That's kind of a hot topic right now. And the whole deal with the Kyle Rittenhouse case is that from the get-go, it was made into a left-right political deal, right? So whatever side you were on, you were gonna stay on that side if that was the reason that you were interested in the case, right? If you were actually interested for the fact that I hope this guy gets justice, or I'm concerned that he did a bad thing to these people, I want to see justice served, I want to make sure that the justice system works, then you would sit as an observer, right? Kind of a third party, sit there and say, you know what, I'm willing to have my mind changed. And I don't think we saw a lot of that necessarily from the left or from the right. The right happened to win this one, if you want to say that. And I'm happy personally with the decision because it means that the justice system still works, right? And I think that's the problem. If you're on the left, you say the justice system is broken. If Kyle was, in fact, not the color that he is, right, you would see a different outcome. And to me, that's not an argument. To say because the system is broken for somebody, it should remain broken for somebody else. It's backwards, in my opinion. You should see those problems, right? And then still be happy that it worked for Kyle and say, you know what? I wish that it didn't have these problems for other folks, but I'm glad that it worked in this case. And I think that's what you see with the Kyle Rittenhouse case. So I was actually kind of happy about that when I saw that they ruled that self-defense is okay here in America still. And I think everyone was kind of sitting, biting their fingernails, didn't know quite how it was going to turn out. I know I was surprised when they found him not guilty on all counts. I thought they would at least try to hit him with something. So for me, that was something to be thankful about, right? That you were able to get a jury and a judge and, at least a few aspects of the justice system to work like they were supposed to, right? And of course, that's my opinion, but it's also based on, the facts of the case and how we're supposed to work here in America. Everyone's supposed to get their day in court. You're supposed to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. And I think that's what you saw in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. So I am thankful that at least in that sense, our justice system works. Something I'm not necessarily thankful for is, like I mentioned before, that you've got this left-right divide, right? And depending on where you were on the left-right divide, that determined what you thought of the Kyle Rittenhouse case. And I think there were a few folks that actually went in and they watched the trial, right? And they said, you know what? I was wrong. I don't think I knew everything there was to know about this watching CNN or MSNBC or anything like that. I think I was wrong. And I really admire, that's something to be thankful for too. I really admire the people that were able to change and say, you know what? I've been lied to by the news or by whomever, right? And now that I watch it and now that I see for myself, you know what? Maybe this wasn't what I thought it was. Maybe I'm willing to change my position. And I can be thankful for that too, because we need more of that. We need more of that. We have not nearly enough of people looking at their opinions and saying, what is this based on? Where does it come from? Why do I believe it? When they're faced with things, they say, no, I don't want to see it. I know what's right. I think we can be thankful when people actually are able to look at things and say, you know what, maybe all of these things that I thought are not necessarily correct, right? And a big part of that comes from looking at where they come from, right? Did the magic box tell me to think this? Did my parents tell me to think this? Did, my favorite politician tell me to think this? Or did I come to this on my own, right? And I think, we talk about pilling all the time, right? There's red pilling, blue pilling, white pilling. I think a lot of people got pilled, right? So we can be thankful for those pills, maybe not the Pfizer pills, which actually is another topic we'll get into in the next segment. But we can be thankful for the good pilling that we've got going on here across the country in the case of the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Matt chimes in here. He says, how do you feel about the prosecutor violating his constitutional rights? Let's get into that. I said earlier that certain aspects of the system worked for this, right? And when I say that, I mean the judge, I mean the jury. They seem like they were impartial. The judge, for as much flack as he caught for aiding, Kyle Rittenhouse or beating up on the prosecutor or what, well, it was a judge. That's his job, right? So the prosecutor was not doing what a prosecutor should, right? You are not allowed to attack a defendant's Fifth Amendment privilege, right? The right not to be self-incriminating, not to be a witness against yourself, all of those things. You're not allowed to make that seem like a bad thing because that's literally written on the founding document, right? You do not have to speak. And they literally, when they read you your rights, they say anything you say can and will, not and might possibly, or anything like that, can and will be held against you in a court of law. So you keep your mouth shut. And that's what Kyle did. And the prosecutor said, no, that's suspicious. You just told me that no matter what I do, I open my mouth and you're going to hold it against me. So, yeah, I think that was a horrible thing for him to do. And the judge was right for knocking him down on that, right? And the judge made the argument. He says that's been settled for 50 years now. And I was like, well, actually, it's been settled for like 250 years, but that's besides the point. I'll give you 50. And I think all he meant there was that probably the case that set that precedent was, 50 years ago or whatever. So I'm not real familiar with what he was referring to, but yeah, prosecutor definitely in the wrong. So I that's another thing I'm thankful for, I guess, in this case, is that we've seen a show, right? It's not a show. I misspoke. We're used to seeing these dramas and these shows and all these things, right? These cop dramas and CSI and NCIS and Fire Los Angeles, whatever it is, right? And I feel like a lot of people feel like that's how the justice system works or whatever. That 10-minute. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is this was a real look at an actual case, an actual unfolding of a jury trial, all of these things. And I think that was good for the people who actually tuned in and watched. They actually got to learn about procedure and about how these things happen, right? How they actually go. And it's kind of a game. I mean, the defense has their story. The prosecution has their story. And the judge is there to kind of, keep them, like, play the referee. And they each have to tell a story to the jury. And it depends upon how good of a story that they tell. That will determine their determination, right? So I think it was good. This is something we can be thankful for, that people were able to watch this and see it go down, and maybe they learned a few things. And Matt recommented here about he thinks the prosecutor should be held accountable. I agree. Now, I'm not necessarily sure exactly the ins and outs of how it's all supposed to work, but from my understanding, a prosecutor can make false claims in the news or in public or whatever, and as long as they make the same claims in the courtroom and they stay consistent, they cannot be touched. I don't know. It's kind of like the whole qualified immunity thing, right? So I want accountability for everybody. I think it should happen for prosecutors, for police, for politicians. Nobody's immune. We are coming up on a break. We'll touch the next topic coming up in the next segment. It's a free solution on WYSL. I am getting that echo. That's what was making me sound like William Shatner. It was playing with my brain. I don't think they are. They're actually only getting my audio from what I could tell on my monitor here. I had it pulled up on YouTube on my my television, and it was just my audio. So they're not getting the station audio, and that's an issue on my end. This is the first time I did it, so I don't know how that works. It'll have to be something that I can figure out with Larry maybe sometime, but this was kind of a last-minute slap-together thing. Nope. Cool. How's it all sound? Okay, good. Yeah, I got an SM7B or whatever. Well, it's not a 7B. It's it's the Shure. It's not the 48. It's the 40. Anyway, I got it running through a mixer, so it's good. Good. Thanks. We are back on A Free Solution, WYSL in Rochester, ACK Newark. I'll get that right one of these breaks. I told you it was in New Jersey last time. It's not. That's not the cool Newark. New York, Newark is where it's at. So the last segment, I talked about the Rittenhouse trial and how we can be thankful for a few things out of that, and had some good feedback on that. Sam, he chimes in. He says, I just received a text from our nanny state of New York reminding everyone 5+ to be vaxxed for the holidays. Vaxxed for the holidays. That's just like Biden said, the best thing you can do to get ready for a hurricane is to get your vaccine, right? Anything to get a vaccine. And that kind of rolls into the next topic that I was going to talk about that we can be thankful for. And Daniel was a little bit concerned about the audio here. He says, I think we lost the audio. I'm doing this from my living room. And it's the first time that I've done this with A Free Solution. So Larry and I spoke about how to route the audio, and I have not quite figured it out. So if you're watching on the live stream, you're not going to hear any of the radio stuff. You'll just hear me. And maybe next time, if I have to cover for Larry, I can get that audio fixed. So I'll have to apologize to Daniel for making him worried that he wasn't going to catch the rest of A Free Solution. He can be happy. He's going to be able to hear all of it here, just not the commercials. So, oh, Daniel says it was on his end. I guess we've all got audio issues. But to get back to what Sam was saying about the text to vax the family, one of the other things that we can be thankful for is the pushback that we are seeing. And it's not enough to my liking, which would be 100%, obviously, because I don't like mandates. But you're seeing a lot of pushback to these mandates from local governments, from state governments, from, probably not really at the national level. But you've got DeSantis down in Florida. Abbott, I think, I'm not entirely sure what his policy was, but at least he did not mandate things after a while, right? He pulled all those. We had a court case here in Utica, actually, that said the mandate was no bueno. And unfortunately, I think that was also struck down. But the point is that we're fighting it, right? People are fighting it. And you even saw the OSHA back down and say, you know what, we're not going to enforce that. Unfortunately, it's still a thing in hospitals in the middle of a pandemic. In the middle of a pandemic, we've got a shortage here of hospital staff, and it's horrible. And, we got to lock down, and we got to flatten the curve, and we got to vax the fam, and we got to wear our masks because we don't want to overwhelm the hospitals. Except let's fire a bunch of hospital workers. I'm not certain how that actually makes sense. And I guess you don't even have to argue it from that. You can just argue it from the point that mandates are wrong, period. You should be able to persuade people. If it's such a good thing, you should be able to say, you know what, I think this is a really good thing. And you're really kind of a jerk if you don't do it, but I respect that, right? Well, that's not how government operates. They get very angry when they say, do something, and you say, you know what? I don't want to. They say, well, you must. So, and we have this going on in Erie County now. It's starting to spike the cases again, right? So we're going back to mask mandates in Erie County, and they're even talking maybe vaccine passports to eat in a restaurant if it doesn't slow the spread, right? So that's not good. So you've still got a fight going on, and that's the point. That's what I want to say you can be thankful for, is people are still fighting, and the state's going to fight back. They're not going to give up. They still want to tell you what to do in perpetuity, it seems. I'm a little bit disappointed about that, about how long it's gone on and about how little resistance we saw. But I think that was because people were still scared, right? They thought, you know what? I'm not so sure how this pandemic is going to play out. I don't know how dangerous it is. I don't have a vaccine. So I'm going to play it safe. I think people are done. I think they're done playing it safe, right? And when I say that, when I say people, obviously that's generalization. It's not all people. And I think there is a pretty even divide between those folks that are still worried about the pandemic and those folks that are, you know what, I want to move on. I think, though, that's fine. If people want to think what they want to think, I have no problem with that. Where the problem comes is with the mandates, right? And they keep changing, and they keep saying this is going to be it. Just do this. It'll be okay. And then we'll get through this. And then they don't, right? So Matt comments, he says, we were all scared in the beginning. And I agree. We didn't know what was going on. I don't know what's going to happen. You've got people that you care about. You've got friends, family. You didn't know if it was the plague. And that's the other point about the nurses, right? They didn't know if this was Armageddon, if I was going to go in and start asphyxiating and fall on the floor or what. And they still went in there. My sister's a nurse. She never stopped working, right? And they had all these quarantine things, right? Where if you were exposed, you had to quarantine. When she wasn't in the hospital, she was doing work from home, scheduling all that stuff, right? And they were working overtime, and they were doing all these things. And now, thank you for your service. See ya. It's literally the same thing we do to the vets, right? We go, you're heroes. Thank you so much. Thank you for our freedom. Blah, 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 blah. Come back. Good luck. And I don't want to, that's not everybody, right? That's just, it's unfortunate that we call these folks heroes. And I see a pattern. We call them heroes when it's convenient. And then when the heroes say, I need a little help here, you say, oh, sorry, can't help you. And that is just too bad. That is just too bad. But we can be thankful for those nurses, for those doctors that went and busted their rumps throughout the whole pandemic. And we can be thankful that people are still trying to fight for our rights, right? And that's up to us too. You have to speak up. You have to, and even if you don't speak up, just resist, right? And you don't have to go out and throw Molotov cocktails. Don't do that, because then you'll bring the guys in with the AR-15s over state lines. And don't do that. But civil disobedience is the way to go. Civil being the operative word in that, right? They can't go and they can't throw everyone in jail and they can't attack everybody. And it's basically just a momentum thing, right? And the state has been building momentum for 120 years, for 100 years, since the Civil War. The federal government has become our ruler, right? It was determined. You may not go against the federal government. You may not do that. So then we all started taking orders. But I think what's happening, you're starting to see people getting sick of taking orders. And that is something that we can be thankful for. I think that's definitely something we can be thankful for. Sam has something he's thankful for. He says, I'm thankful for Larry and his team. It is good to be a part of such a supportive community that values peaceful and free solutions. And I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I think, and this is a point that I wanted to make. Libertarians, I'm a libertarian. Larry's a libertarian. Everyone on this show is libertarian. We do love each other, but we also fight each other so much. And I'd like to see a little less of that. I'd like to see a little less of that because everybody else is fighting us. Why do we want to fight ourselves? Right. So, and it's not a I hate you fight. It's just I think a lot of libertarians have a lot of principles that they feel very strongly about, and they don't want to budge on them. Right. So I think if we could just be a little bit more open to having our minds changed, right? Like I talked about in the first segment, I think that would make us love each other even more. And we have to be more welcoming of the people that want to join the liberty movement. They come in and they say, oh boy, I like freedom. And we say, you're a statist bootlicker. And they say, okay, I'm gone. So we need to be a little bit better about that. But I'm thankful that people want to come. I'm thankful that they want to hear the message of liberty. I'm thankful that we have so many people preaching the message of liberty. So if you're a libertarian, just keep that in mind. People start coming to you and talking about wanting to come over to us. Don't scare them away. Welcome them. And that is a free solution. We'll be back right after the break. Perfect. All right. Good to hear. Thanks. Yeah. Got to keep the owner happy. Yeah, I'm familiar with him. Even out here in central New York, he's got some reach. That's the radio business, hopping all over the place. You know, you got to move where you can. That's the way to do it. Thanks. We are back on WYSL, WACK Newark. It is a free solution. My name is Craig Miles. I am in for Larry Sharpe. Larry, he actually chimed in. Apparently, he's listening on the stream or on the radio. Old school guy. So he says, Craig knocking it out of the park. Hi from Shortsville. I'm not nearly familiar enough with Western New York to know where that is. But thank you, Larry, for listening in. Appreciate the comment. Our next topic is the elections in Virginia and New Jersey. Now, I know this is kind of old news, but I think it's still relevant, right? You had a governor, and you're going to have to excuse me. I don't even know the names anymore because that's how little I paid attention. But you had the sitting governor of Virginia, right, get overthrown by a Republican. And that had a lot to do with the school situation down there, with mandates and trying to control parents and sending the FBI after violent terrorists, right? Domestic terrorists, because I asked a question about my school board. That's kind of not cool. So people say, you know what? I don't think I like the way that the establishment is running things, right? And what they did was go for who they thought was the anti-establishment. Now, I don't know anything about the Republican that went down there, so I can't really comment on his policies or what he believes. My concern is that he's just going to go in there and do Republican things to control your life instead of do Democrat things to control your life, right? But the point is that you can see people pushing back, right? The government does something they don't like. They say, I don't like that. You're out. And that's the way it's supposed to be. Now, I would prefer that they would say, I don't like that. I'm going to vote Libertarian. I know a lot of people aren't quite there yet, right? And that's fine. That's fine. I think we can be thankful, though, that people are using their voice and voting, because that is important. And a lot of people on the anarchist side, they'll say, I'm not going to vote. That encourages them, right? That makes me complicit in anything. My point is, even as hard as it is to actually make a change by voting, it still does make a change, right? And that's our only mechanism, because like we were talking earlier with the accountability, there's no account. You're not going to get a politician. You see how hard it was to get Andrew Cuomo out of office? Do you see? He had a lawsuit every hour against him. Nobody did anything to get him out of there. And he owned a bunch of people. So the only way to get people out is to vote them out. And they make it really hard to do that. They fight you every step of the way. Every step of the way. But even that being the case, you saw down in Virginia, we said, so long, see ya. They did it in New Jersey too. They almost got the Democrat out. And I'm not beating up on Democrats here. It's just the way it went, right? I'll beat up on Democrats, but not for this. They thought they had it, right? They thought they had it in a landslide. And then it turns out it was kind of close. And then you also had the guy in the legislature down there, a truck driver, spent $150 on donuts, beat the Democratic king for the past however many years, right? And that, again, was because the people said, I don't like the way this is going. Give me anybody but the establishment. Unfortunately, the left-right duopoly is the establishment, no matter what, except for that truck driver, right? And again, these are generalizations, so everything has an exception, right? But in general, if you are a Republican or a Democrat who has been in politics, you're an establishment person. You've been captured by somebody there, right? So Matt comments on this, says, I don't claim any party. I just vote for the candidate that makes the most sense to me. Sometimes it's libertarian, sometimes it's not. And I respect Matt for that because people don't do that. People vote for their team, no matter what, right? Red or blue, no matter who, and how many times you've heard that, right? So, yeah, you heard that from Biden and Harris, right? Blue, no matter who. And then it turned out they meant the blue crowd, right? The cops. Well, Kamala was a cop. Are you surprised? So the point is, you got to vote your conscience. You got to vote your feelings. You got to vote your principles. And people are doing that. We can be thankful for that. Sam chimes in here. He says, adding to my list to be thankful for all the platforms that allow us to communicate liberty. These radio stations, YouTube, Locals, Spotify, Green Room. 20 years ago, hard to get the message out. And Sam is right about that. 20 years ago, you'd have to go to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, not even Fox, right? Because Fox is fairly new to the game. But you had to get your news from the Magic Box. Now, I can go to YouTube and Facebook, and as long as the person hasn't been banned for speaking too much truth, I can learn a lot of things. So I think Sam is right with that, right? You have a lot more options. If you want to break away from the Magic Box, you have a lot of other alternatives that you can go and take a look at. And I think that's something we can also be thankful for. I agree with Sam on that one. Back to the trucker, the $150 trucker guy. I think it was John Oliver. I watched John Oliver. I get a kick out of him. He's a huge lefty, and he always wants government to fix everything. But he's funny. And he always talks about issues that are relevant, right? So he showed a video of the truck driver after he won up on Fox News. And the host says to him, so you got any plans? And he says, you know what? I really don't know. And John Oliver says, that's horrible. How could you blah, 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 blah. How is he going to have any sort of connection in, well, back up. He can have plans, right? Maybe that's not the best answer that he could have given. Maybe he should have had a plan, but he spent $158. He didn't know he was going to win, right? That being said, he probably should have had a plan. The other side of that is that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? John Oliver's like, he's got no connections. He's got no experience. He's blah, 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 blah. Why do I need any of that? Why do I need any of that? We've got this idea here in America, and this isn't how we began. Anyone was supposed to be able to run for office. And I'm going to have to check myself there. My mistake, because we did restrict the people that were allowed to be running, right? You had to be white, landowner, you couldn't be African-American, we had slavery, all those things. So I'll back up on that one. But the point that I was trying to make is that you didn't have to be some political whatever, right? You could just be a person. And I feel like these days, now we need a political expert. Now we need a this. Now we need someone with experience. Now, what we've lost this idea that anyone can step up and stop driving a truck and run for the legislator in New Jersey and beat this 30-year incumbent, right? And they do that on purpose because they're all buddies with each other, and they all know what they want. And they don't want someone with different ideas in there. So I can be thankful that that guy stepped up to the plate and ran. And I can be thankful that he won. And I can be thankful that people saw that. And maybe that will inspire other people to say, you know what? I'm sick of this. You saw it with AOC. She was a bartender. And she beat Crowley. Joe Crowley. Was it Joe? He was the big Democrat scary guy down there, right? And she beat him. Now, I think she was a little more involved in politics than maybe the trucker guy was. But the idea is still the same, right? That people voted against the incumbent. People voted against the establishment. So I think we can be thankful for that. I think we are seeing more people question things, saying, do I really need this guy in here that's been in for 100 years? Joe Biden that's been in since 1896, do we need that guy or do we need somebody else? I would say somebody else. I think it's you should change them often, change politicians often, right? And there's a quote, I think it's George Carlin, about changing politicians and diapers, and I won't go into the whole thing, but you get the idea. So politicians are maybe a little bit more worried about keeping their constituency happy after this last election. Now, the unfortunate thing for libertarians, the other side of the coin here, is Republicans are emboldened now, right? So before, where maybe someone might have voted for a libertarian because they said, I've been voting for Republicans for years now and I haven't been able to get one in office, let me try something new. A lot of Republicans now are going to point to Virginia and to New Jersey and say, see, Republicans can win. I am obviously biased because I'm a libertarian and I want us to win things. And Republicans have had a seat at the table and Democrats have had a seat at the table for 150 years, right? Why don't we try something new? I think, though, you're going to see a lot of people start beating the Republican drum here in New York again. And I have no problem with Republicans. I have no problem with Republicans. I have a lot of friends who are Republicans. My father's a Republican. I was a registered Republican when I started my political journey. So I am very friendly with Republicans. My concern is that you have establishment here in New York, and the letter is just a letter. And if you vote for that letter, whether it's an R or a D, it's an E, establishment. So let's be happy that people are voting against the R's and the D's and the establishments. And let's hope we get more of that. That's something that we can be thankful for on A Free Solution. WYSL, WACK. We'll be back after the break to wrap things up. Thanks. I appreciate that. I'm having fun too. So it's a good time. Okay. Oh, that'd be awesome. Thanks. Oh, and then it comes down. Yeah, cool. Thanks. Yeah, that probably helps you guys save space, right? Having not to leave it up there the whole time. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. See where I'm speaking to. It's out near Utica. Yep. Welcome back to Free Solution. You'll have to excuse me. I was hopping in there dealing with a little cold here. So I was blowing my nose and coughing. But we're back at Free Solution, WYSL, WACK, Newark. And I want to talk in the last segment about something that I kind of touched on earlier, which was being friends, coming together, right? And being happy with each other, no matter how much we disagree with what people might say, right? People have opinions and we need to respect that. And I feel like we take it too personally sometimes. We get really angry that someone doesn't believe what we believe. And we say that's a personal affront to my liberty, to my being. You are a horrible person. I don't want to talk to you. And you know what? That is not only soul crushing after a while, but it's unproductive because we're fighting each other and we're not fighting the people that are telling us to hate each other. And people, I feel like they roll their eyes a little bit when you're like, that's what they want. They want us divided. You know, they gotta keep us divided and distracted so we don't fight. That's not a conspiracy. That's a thing. And maybe it's not conscious, but literally, what would you rather do, right? If I would take politics out of it, if I'm a guy and someone's coming after me and I say, don't hate me, hate that guy, that works pretty good for me, right? If someone says, oh, yeah, I'll go hate that guy, that is exactly what's going on. So it doesn't even have to be a conspiracy. It's literally because if you're not taking accountability for yourself, right? And you point the finger at someone else, it works real well. And now those people are fighting each other, and I get to go do what I want to do. So to tie this back into the Thanksgiving thing, we always joke about family, right? And you've got that one uncle that won't shut up about Trump, or the one aunt that thinks, you know, she was on riding with Biden, you know, or whatever. And it's just like, we can't talk politics anymore because everyone hates each other. It doesn't have to be that way. You can talk to your crazy uncle. You can talk to your crazy aunt. And as long as you're coming from a place of mutual respect, then it should all be good. Right? So I think we need to be a little bit more aware of that. And I am one of the biggest offenders here. I am very quick to get very wound up. And I've been trying to be better about that. Just take a breath, back up, And you know what? No one's gonna change their mind because you're yelling at them. That's never gonna happen. So if your goal is to change minds, then try to understand what the person is saying, right? And maybe listen to them. And then go ahead. And if you guys can't find common ground, you'll just have to agree to disagree, right? And it's not because that person is a bad person. Maybe they're a bad person, but because they don't share the same viewpoint as you, that does not make them a bad person. They'll be a bad person for other reasons, but that is not the reason. So we need to try to come together. And that was just kind of the thing that I wanted to talk about in the last segment, was how we can kind of appreciate one another and be thankful for each other. I think we can be thankful for the opposite opinions, right? Because there is no black and white. There's no black and white. There's no such thing. I don't care what you say. That's not a thing. There's always nuance. There's always individual situations. There's always something else going on there. There's always an exception. I said at the beginning of the show, always an exception, right? So if we can try to understand where people are coming from, and I've been doing this on TikTok. I follow a bunch of people on TikTok that I would not consider even remotely close to my political ideas. And I catch myself getting angry at some of the stuff they say. And I want to swipe. I'll be like, I'm not going to listen to you. But if you stick around, sometimes they surprise you. They say something that you didn't expect them to go down that road. And you're like, you know what? I'm glad I didn't swipe up, because this guy actually kind of said something that makes me understand a little bit better where they're coming from and what they're actually saying, because I think there's a lot of projection that goes on. You hear someone say something, and even though the words are the same, right, their meaning might not be the same. So you need that context that comes a little bit later. But if you get angry and fly out the handle and close your ears, you're never going to get that. And we're never going to come together. And those folks in Albany and in DC, they're going to keep lining their pockets. They're going to keep doing whatever they want. And we're going to keep fighting with each other over Thanksgiving, when we should be eating turkey and green bean casserole and oyster casserole and all of these things, right? We should be enjoying each other's company. And that's what Thanksgiving is about. That's what holidays are about. That's what your family's about. For God's sakes, love your family. You know, you don't have to be angry at your family for not sharing the same opinions as you do. You know, because where would we be if we all had the same opinion? That's literally the root of libertarianism, is that everyone is their own individual. Everyone has inherent value because they exist. And we can learn something from everyone, right? And I truly do believe that. Nothing is truly one way or the other. And I want to put up a couple comments from my friend Nate here. I've left him in the dust, but he's over here in the same part of New York as I am. And he says, my libertarianism is better than yours. So another guy from my neck of the woods is Francis. He's listening in. Hi, Francis. I appreciate you tuning in here. Torrance, talking about our last subject with the term limits and the age limits. I would agree with that, right? So it shouldn't be necessary, because the argument they say with term limits is, well, they keep electing them, right? Obviously, that's what the people want. Well, if our elections were fair, I would agree with that. And I'm not talking Russiagate. I'm not talking those things in fair elections. I'm talking in keeping people off the ballot. I'm talking people being able to spend money to kick people off the ballot. I'm talking having to have a bunch of money to be able to run in the first place. That's what I'm talking about with fair elections, right? So if we had those, I wouldn't necessarily be a proponent of term limits. But since we don't have those, and it's going to be a long time before we even come close to something like that, I do support term limits. Age limits, I'm a little less. You walked down a whole road with this, right? Because you went through this with Trump. And I guess really we're going to have to save that for another episode because we're getting towards the end here. But I thank you guys. Thank you, Torrance. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I really enjoyed this. Hope I get to do it again soon. And enjoy your Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be thankful for on a free solution. Thanks. Talk to you again. Thank you very much.